All right, everyone, we are going to get started. I am going to turn it over to Jody Flynn to kick us off.
Thank you so much, Katie. And hello, everyone. My name is Jody Flynn, and I'm the president of the Maine Women's Conference. I would like to welcome you to our third installment of the 2021 Maine Women's Conference WeAreME interview series. The mission of the Maine Women's Conference is to draw women together, to connect, educate, inspire, and empower one another to assume new and expanded roles in the workforce, our lives, and communities. Conceived against this mission, our virtual WeAreME series is featuring gritty, determined, and inspirational women who will share their stories, lessons learned, and words of wisdom. Tonight, we are very excited to be talking with Jennifer Lever, president of Baxter Brewing. Throughout our conversation with Jen, we encourage you to connect with your fellow attendees and share your thoughts via the chat function. We also would love to get to know you better, so we'll be throwing up a couple of polls starting now with our first one. Tell us, is this your first Maine Women's Conference event? As a note, we reserve time to answer your questions at the end of the interview, so please submit all your questions using the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. Now, let me tell you a little bit about Jen. Jen is an Auburn, Maine native who started her food and beverage career work with PepsiCo. She has since held several leadership positions within the industry that took her from New York to Virginia before she returned to Maine in 2014. She joined Baxter Brewing as a consultant before assuming leadership roles and eventually succeeding Baxter Brewing founder Luke Livingston as president in 2019. She has led Baxter Brewing through COVID-19, a successful rebrand, and expanded distribution to curbside and delivery. Now, I'd like to turn it over to my fellow board member, Nancy Kogelmeyer, to kick off the interview.
Uh-oh. Hi, Nancy. I think you're muted.
Okay, starting over. Thank you, Jody, and welcome, Jen. On behalf of the Maine Women's Conference Board, we would like to thank you for taking the time this evening amidst your very busy schedule to chat with us. I know there's lots of people who are tuned in tonight who are really interested to hear what you have to say. If by no other reason except that there are a ton of questions that came in ahead of time, showing how much interest there was before you even started to talk. On that front, to those of you who did submit questions ahead of time, thank you for doing so. In some cases, we've taken the questions and worked them into the script for our conversation with Jen. In other cases, we will include them in the Q&A, which will follow our conversation. So, back to Jen. Here's how I'd like to start. I'd like to start with knowing the big picture of who you are, Jen. How did you get to where you are today, what you've experienced, and what you've learned along the way? As one example, I can share that Jen was a Girl Scout. She was a Brownie and a Junior Girl Scout, a hot ticket on the cookie sales front. And this is all something that was very interesting to our Maine Women's Conference community partners, the Girl Scouts of Maine. In this picture, which you can see on your screen, Jen is a Junior Girl Scout, setting an excellent example for a whole bunch of cute little brownies in the background. So just out of interest, wondering who on this call tonight were involved at some point with the Girl Scouts or are involved today. So now let's get into answering some questions. Okay, Jen, where did you grow up? What was it like? What did you study in school? There's our poll results. Pretty sizable percentage, 70% of people on this call were involved or are involved in the Girl Scouts today. That's impressive. Okay, so what did you study in school? What activities were you involved with? Were you an athlete? Were you an actress? Were you involved in student government or some combination thereof? What can you tell us about yourself?
So I grew up in Auburn, Maine. Both my parents graduated from Edward Little in Auburn and raised my brother and I there. I went on to study economics and sociology in college. But in high school, I was in almost every activity that you could be in except for drama, which my parents, if they were being interviewed, would probably tell you that was a missed opportunity for me, as I enjoy theatrics. But I was in student government, ran for class president as a freshman, and then ran all 4 years, Odyssey of the Mind, softball, field hockey, skiing for freshman and sophomore year, and then into track. Did Big Brothers Big Sisters, National Honor Society. I loved being busy, and I loved engaging and giving back to the community. And went into college, I did rowing for the first year. So I really like trying new things. That's something that's still definitely true today. And then went into intramural sports for the latter part of my college years. So definitely very active, fell in love with sociology, had a little bit of exposure to it in high school, and absolutely fell in love my freshman year. I was told, do not take this particular professor. He was very hard, and I not only took him and then ended up TAing for him, but loved it, loved the patterns of sociology and the social norms versus acting outside of those norms and why that feels comfortable or uncomfortable. And then economics just felt like it was the right fit for me for trying to pursue a business career. I thought at one point that I wanted to transfer to go to a business school. And one of my best decisions was to stay at Hobart and William Smith and pursue the liberal arts education. And I think it's paid dividends in my experience thus far.
Well, I'm sure we'll talk about that as we go through how you've applied things learned there. Well, so as Jody mentioned, your professional path to where you are today has included a number of experiences and leadership positions in the food and beverage industry. So is that a path that was pre-paved, that you knew you wanted to go down the route to that industry? Is it an accident based on an interview you took? Or is it just you? This is Jen as a young lady wearing a business suit with her backpack briefcase, showing that there was definitely an interest in business at an young age. So what can you tell us about how you ended up in the industry you're in?
In college, I wanted to maximize my exposure in the summer to trying as many different things as possible. Before I had ever had gotten kind of the best advice that I've been given, I was really interested in trying new things and submerging myself into those experiences. And so I got my real estate license my sophomore year of college and moved to Boston and sold real estate for that summer. And then I got an experience in a class called Sociology of Business Management, where one of the assignments was to meet with a career development person at our college. At the time, the professor that was teaching that class knew that I was looking to transfer for a business degree and was a huge part of not only me staying at Hobart, but choosing to study abroad in South Africa. And he really encouraged me to make the most of the experience with the career development person. And the gentleman that I met with had worked at Pepsi for 26 years. And so he had some operational background, but he suggested I take a scholarship internship program with a company called Cintas in Syracuse, New York. Mm-hmm. And as many of the things that I do, I came back from South Africa early in order to start my internship and kind of dove right in and returned back to fall that year, raving about what I had done and the consumer complaint index that I had built and how to make the trips more efficient and looking at gas mileage and customer satisfaction and organization. And so he really shed light for me that everything I was raving about was operations. And so there was no degree in operations at Hobart and William Smith, but really brought to light that I loved operations. I was motivated by operations. I was fueled by it. And that if I loved operations, the only place to do operations was with Pepsi. And so I applied. This was my junior fall, and they flew me out to Rhode Island, and I bought my first real suit, not the pink and purple little number you got to just see, but, and we went through this 2-day interview process, and everyone I was interviewing against were engineer majors. So, you know, everything was kind of, and all but 2 candidates were males. And so I definitely, it was probably one of the first experiences where I felt really like less than, you know, that wasn't up to par with what the expectation was going to be. But it was an incredible experience, and we got to rank, you know, where we would want to work if we did get the job offer. And long story short, I got the offer. Actually, I got it on my birthday, November 16th, on my senior year of college. And I was in the location that I had ranked as my top location, and I'd ranked it just based on exposure. So at the Latham plant, they had the most variety in packaging that they had done. And also they were a union facility. And so it was giving me a ton of exposure to things that I had never done before. And yeah, it happened. I didn't even know that I wanted to do anything operationally based until someone told me what it was called. You know, I was talking about my love and passion for it. And then Bob explained to me that, oh, what you're talking about is operations. And I've been addicted ever since.
So clearly listening to people who are in your ear, getting different kinds of experience during college allowed you to really hit the ground running at age, whatever, 22, as you came out of school. Very, very interesting. Good things to listen to and learn from. So are there 2 or 3 points, sort of career inflection points since that time to where you are today, where you faced a particular challenge or had to make a key decision that affects where you are today, what you've been able to do and where you are?
Yeah, I think the decision, I was really on the cusp of leaving Hobart. And so although it wasn't a career decision, it really led the path for me to learn about operations and have somebody suggest to me to apply to Pepsi. So to stay at Hobart and William Smith, like not only because of the relationships and friendships I founded there, but the exposure and the liberal arts degrees that I received, but also the work I was able to align with at that time. And upstate New York is a gorgeous place and has a lot of similarities to the charm I think that Maine offers. And I am, I think, a better person for having experienced some different areas of the country. So staying at Hobart certainly was one. Moving to Latham, New York, not knowing a soul, just based on the career opportunity, I really looked at it as get as much experience and exposure as early as possible. I always knew Maine was where my heart and life would be. Long term, I didn't necessarily know what long term meant. I thought really it would be based on my brother having children, it would be time to move back. But I've always been incredibly in love with Maine and very aware of how fortunate I was to have grown up here. I really wanted to expand my horizons and get as much exposure as possible everywhere I could. So going to Latham, New York, not knowing anybody, was definitely a big decision and solely based on experience. And then moving to Virginia, I did not have any aspirations of moving to Virginia. I had no aspirations of moving into the role that I had. I actually was prepared to take on the production manager role, which at the time was like my dream role, in Rhode Island, Cranston, Rhode Island. My boxes were packed and I had apartment picked out and I was ready to pull the trigger. And I went in on Monday morning and they said, "We traded you.
Whoa.
You're going down to Wytheville, Virginia." And so I got on a plane and I went down to Wytheville and I went with it. I went with the advice and the experience. It was the biggest plant in the country. And I don't think that there would be any way that I'd be running a brewery at 35 if I hadn't gone down to Virginia. Mm-hmm. And it was incredible. I got to experience the love and passion behind college football that I didn't know anything about. And I got to answer how I was 26 and not married, and got all kinds of challenging questions and differences of what's expected of our demographic. And yeah, I think I'm better and more well-rounded for the experience.
Very helpful and very interesting. Wow, that was quite a jolt. Rhode Island to Virginia. Okay. So do you think you would act the same way or make the same decision today, looking back at those points?
Yeah, I think that I wouldn't be the same person, and not that I couldn't be better. Everyone can always be better.
Mhm.
But I don't think that I would have learned as much as quickly had I not done so many things to make myself uncomfortable and put myself into a situation and where I had myself to rely on and to figure it out. And I have been so fortunate. I have incredible relationships and mentorships and friendships that I've made along the way. And I've learned a lot, and I have an incredible appreciation for, I'm back in Maine, and I don't think that there's ever been a moment in time where I've taken that for granted, that I get to be in the place I love, having a career I really love. And prior to 2017, I really didn't drink anything darker than a Mick Ultra. So it's been an interesting path.
For sure. There's no doubt about it. So over the course of those years and that awesome journey you've been on so far, what would you consider to be your biggest accomplishment?
I think long before I got the advice formally, but certainly in one of my first leadership experiences at Pepsi, the speaker gave the advice to be comfortable being uncomfortable. As soon as you're comfortable, it means you're kind of ready for the next challenge. And I think I took that advice to heart, and I actually followed that advice probably before I knew that it was an advice, trying to challenge myself and prove to myself if I could withstand a challenge. I am about as competitive as they come, as my family would say, but I think that the challenge of being uncomfortable and continuously improving, and as I learned Six Sigma and looking at the continuous improvement and how to make yourself better, I think it's an asset to be most critical of yourself versus others. If you can turn that lens inward before you look outward, you focus more about what you're adding to the world or not adding versus what other people are not giving you. So I think the experience of being comfortable being uncomfortable is a good one, and it's something that I keep close to my heart and keep trying to strive with our current team with, and it's been really rewarding for me so far.
Oh, that is very cool. Good for you. So are there any other professional or personal lessons learned that you'd like to share with our audience, or that or that you think they could apply to their own lives?
I think that it's incredible, doing a lot more listening than talking is a huge asset. And for me personally, I'm very driven by the idea of transforming a team. So when I came into Pepsi, it wasn't because I thought soda is the best thing that ever happened to the world and let me be part of bringing more soda to the planet. And I can assure you, I never thought about wanting to cut romaine for my whole life. But I think when you look at what motivates people and why they choose to be on the teams that they're on or the career that they're in, and you find ways to eliminate hurdles for them and make their lives more satisfying, I think that it's that transformation of teams and being able to build that aspect and culture has been a strength of mine. And it's not the same strength or trait for everybody, but when you look at the things that you left your work that day feeling that it was a better place because you showed up that day. It's one of the things I kind of lean on in interviews is this is a place, Baxter's a place you can come and that it made a difference because you showed up to work. Whether it was with Baxter or the vegetable place or Pepsi, I have always wanted to leave the situation, the department, the team better than how I found it, and empowering people to realize that better work-life balance is possible, better job satisfaction is possible, has been, it's certainly the most rewarding things that I've done in my career so far.
Makes a lot of sense. You combine that with the idea of always going to your discomfort zone, so to speak. You got a pretty powerful combination for
Yeah.
making things happen and making an impact. Very cool. So what advice might you have for other women who are looking to move into senior leadership roles? Senior leadership roles. Sorry, that was a tongue twister.
I think that some of the worst advice that I've gotten in my career has been to seek out other females in the field when I've been in particular situations where there weren't females in the field. So I could
Mhm.
seek advice from the female accountants on how to do better in operations, and it didn't really resonate. And so I think the best thing that you can do is to align yourself with people, whether they're males or females, whether they're peers or superiors, that emulate the behaviors and beliefs that you want to be known for. Whether that's that person is known for always showing respect and always giving time to subordinates or to peers or whatever it might be. Seek advice from those people. And look to understand how they made the business decisions and development decisions along their path. I think I did a lot of asking about that, and certainly something I'm more comfortable with as an adult than I wasn't comfortable with as a child is admitting when you don't know something is an incredibly strong asset, and being able to show that vulnerability not only gets people to believe in you and trust that you're not going to lead them astray just because you always want to know the answer, but being generous with praise and very selective with criticism, I think is incredibly important. And it's certainly things that I've seen out of mentors I've had along the way. But focusing more on the person you want to be and the behaviors you want to practice versus what the gender of the person might be. You really can't pave the way for more females to be in your your particular field or industry if you don't get there, if you don't get to that next level. And once you're comfortable with groups, I think challenging the norm and having some of those conversations about the lack of female examples you have, amongst your peer group or a superior group is certainly, but it was a good experience for me at Pepsi, but it definitely is a matter of building some trust and faith before you start pushing those conversations.
That makes complete sense. Absolutely. Very cool. Well, actually, my next question was, is there a common piece of advice with which you disagree? Is there anything else you would say on that front?
That's a tough one.
Well, you did already cover one. You can say that. You can say, nope, I got there already.
Yeah, I think it's hard. I think that it's important to be vocal and to speak to your needs, but really engaging and asking yourself if your male counterparts are asking for their same belief system or needs to be considered when you're 22 and you're first entering a company. If you're the one kind of always speaking to your feelings or needs, or you're just kind of carrying the company line, I think it's a challenging piece. And once you grow that trust and faith in your peer group, at least in my experience, starting to have those conversations and push the people around you to think about that differently and think about the women that have lacked the experience. It's not because as women, we just don't have the ability to be in operations, but there's a lot more roadblocks that stand in the way, whether that's exposure or even knowing that operations is a job or being given the tools to set up and be successful, and being told that having emotions of any kind or can be bad. I would say I'm one of the more emotional people that I know. I feel everything on kind of a next level, and I think that the enthusiasm I bring to the table is something that differentiates me, but in a positive way. So it's about funneling those emotions and knowing when it's appropriate to show them and when they can be used as an asset to help drive the team and get them behind something that you really believe in and that you think the team will be better for.
Excellent. Very interesting. Excellent. So what does success look like for you in the Baxter organization?
I mean, the success of Baxter, I think that my success is founded in Baxter's success. I don't feel like I could say that I'd be successful without Baxter's success. And I think certainly the health and safety of our team was always of the utmost importance. But this year, particularly with COVID, I think it's offered an incredible opportunity to not only put the physical safety of our staff ahead, but the mental safety and health of our team at the forefront of conversations. If my team is thriving and they're happy and they're satisfied in the work they're doing, and do we love every single thing we do every single day? No, I don't think that that's the measure of success, but certainly that they feel empowered and they feel listened to and they feel that they can make an impact on the decisions we're making. And even if it's not a decision they don't agree with, they feel informed about the direction or why we'd be going there. Yeah, I think that for me, even at the same volume, defines success. And then of course, the annual growth is another piece. So I certainly want to keep imploring and expanding our team. So, and having annual growth year over year is a huge piece of our success. It's an incredibly competitive and passionate market, and we're fortunate to have careers in it. And so I think continuing to stay ahead of those trends and evaluating our role and place in this market is important. And I think it'll be what keeps our very, very valuable team engaged about what else we can accomplish.
Very good. Hopefully your January ended well.
We did 9% up. So I'm
way to go.
Yeah,
That's outstanding.
Yeah.
For the audience, when we talked with Jen a week ago in preparation for this, we asked how January is going, and her response was, well, we're 3 weeks into it, 1 more week to go, and we're on track. That just helps you understand where that competitiveness and desire to drive the business and support the people is where it's coming from or what it's all about. So you have mentioned mentors in your comments so far. Can you tell us anything about the people who have been mentors for you? Did they come to you? Did you find them? What type of advice would you give to other people on that front?
I would say in just my own experience that the best mentors are the ones that naturally happen. There were times in my career, and Pepsi is an incredible organization, and they do an incredible job with leadership development and trying to pair up leaders. I have found a lot more success in the leaders that have happened naturally, in bosses that I've had at different points in time where there's just a very powerful, at least for me, very motivating, powerful thing when you're hitting on all cylinders with someone and you think the same way and they push you and they hold you accountable and you know they always have your best interests in mind, but they're going to also raise the bar and level of expectation. So my mentors have been people that have just naturally happened. I was very, very fortunate that one of my first bosses in the Pepsi system has been an incredible mentor and now friend, but someone that stays in touch and we kind of keep track of each other and how things are going. And sometimes it's every 3 months and sometimes it's once a year and sometimes it's every other week. But when you really appreciate and value what a person stands for, those have been the most rewarding mentors for me. When it's an authentic respect for who the person is and how maybe they don't make every decision in the exact right way, but you know that they're always putting their best faith and forth and thoughts forward. I think that those are the mentors that I've connected with the most and have definitely been really meaningful for me.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Makes a lot of sense. I agree with you on that front, definitely. Are there any other resources that have been helpful to you over these years, sort of after your college degree?
Yeah, I think not only having so many friends in different fields and listening to the challenges and struggles that other people in other fields have. I think it gives you a level of appreciation of, yes, my challenges may be different or they may feel really intense right now, but relative to what other people might be going through, life is short, and how do you do the best you can do? I think Pepsi, again, did an incredible job with the leadership mentor programs. And every time I was asked to either be at a leadership program, they would give a book. And I actually have all of the books I've ever been assigned. And the books have been something I've drawn on. There's a couple in particular that I've drawn on throughout my career. I just recently assigned one of my first books to an employee of mine. And I think when you continue to recommit to those and you evaluate your own thought process around them. And, I'm sure I don't approach and think about things. I hope to God not, but I don't think about things the same at 35 as I did at 22. And when you go in with that new perspective and you're your own worst critic in those developmental books, it's a good experience, and it's a good gauge of if you're pushing yourself. And there's so many people, men and women, that have done things a lot longer than I have and a lot better. And I'd be foolish to not take the opportunity to try to learn from those people. And I think Maine, actually, particularly, and maybe I'm less connected or more connected now than I was when I was in Virginia, but does a great job with having speaker forums, and the Chamber of Commerce here in Portland, but also in Lewiston. They try to give you that exposure. I think the tools and the advice is out there, and not every piece of advice has to be something that you put into practice. But I personally have taken a lot from reading, suggested readings, just because it gives me the ability to kind of be retrospective and apply it to what I might have going on in that particular day. Whereas a discussion, might be a little bit more zeroed in.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Very helpful. I have a feeling there's probably, I'm not following chat, so I can concentrate on you, but that there may be questions asking, what are those books? So you may hear from us for an answer to that question, but maybe not right now. Okay, I think you've covered this pretty thoroughly about the fact that the brewery industry is still very male dominated. Is there any advice you would have for women when working in a male dominated field? This is Jen with some of her compadres at Baxter Brewing. Is there anything else you would add to what you've already said?
I think that, before you talk about gender, you talk about what are the behaviors or things that you want to see out of a good employee or a good peer, and really evaluate for yourself, are you that person? Are you doing it in beer? I was never the person getting up on the brew deck making our recipes, and I didn't need to pretend to be that person in the discussions. And there's times where that might feel like that's what I should be bringing to the table, because so many of the incredible craft breweries in Maine are people that wrote the original recipe, founded the company, and I can't make up my history. So I can't pretend that that is my own history, and I have to own what mine is and feel comfortable and confident about what I bring to the table. And that's not what I bring, and that's okay. And that's why I have an incredible team around me that brings that. So knowing where your own strengths and opportunities are, rather than weaknesses, they're just opportunities for you to learn more. And whether you're male or female, admitting when you don't know something is an incredible strength, and is something that I try to stay very close to. And I've learned a heck of a lot more about hops than I ever thought I would ever know. And that's what continues to be incredibly exciting and rewarding for me, is I get to learn more about many things I impact every single day. And I think when it came to a point where I wasn't learning anymore, I wouldn't be satisfied by the work. So we're a long way from that happening, as my team would probably tell you.
Good for you. All right. Well, you like variety. So you've got hops in your background, you've got lettuce in your background, and you've got soda in your background. It's a combination. What can we say?
Yeah, it's I always tell people that, no one at the vegetable company ever told me I just thought about cutting romaine my entire life. people worked at Pepsi for a number of reasons, but you never said, oh, I work at Pepsi, and people said, oh, what's that? And then working at the vegetable place, it was a lot more, there wasn't a lot of other opportunities for those particular individuals based on education or whatever it might be. And so now I get the best of both worlds of working in an industry where people do it because they've dreamt their entire lives of having careers in craft beer, and they're passionate and they're emotional and they're incredibly tied to the success of the brand. And I get to help make that a reality. Even though I didn't dream my whole life about making beer, I'm doing it practically in my hometown, Lewiston, Auburn, and for people that really deserve to be recognized for the work that they do. I think, admittedly, think I have the best team that's out there, but to help make that a reality and see that they get to not only have a job, but have a career with Baxter, and that there's longevity is, yeah, I could go on for probably too long, but I'm incredibly
That's all right. I like your enthusiasm. I like that. Well, let's build on that a little bit. So what is next for you? What are your future goals and ambitions that you can share in this kind of a forum?
So there's a mill building right across the bridge. If you've been to Baxter and you look at the pub, there's a bridge and there's a mill right next door. So my goal is to be in that mill. So it's higher ceilings, bigger space, rotary filler. And so we've got about 10,000 barrels more that we need to sell in order to start the building of that space. But yeah, my goal is, 3 to 5 years to be looking at that space and remembering when all we had was the old space, and then keeping the old space for dedicated, more specialty brews or 19.2 ounce runs, or I don't know what other cans might come out in the world, what size cans, but yeah, I think that's a huge aspiration. And then another aspiration would be to be a B Corp. So there's very few right now in Maine, and I would love to be at the cutting edge of that for the sake of our team, and to be the first food safe certified brewery.
Those of you who are listening that don't know what a B Corp is, just go Google it. But it's a combination of having financial metrics and social impact metrics in the mix for governance of an organization. And I only know that because my son's in one out here in Denver, Colorado. So, okay, we're now going to transition into the Q&A period. We're going to start, as I mentioned earlier, with questions that were submitted ahead of time. And if we have time, we will go on to other ones. So please load up the chat with questions you have for Jen, and we'll do our best to get to them. So our first question from our audience is, what is the most important business lesson that you've learned along the way? Or learn the hard way, maybe, is another
hard way.
Sorry.
Yeah, I think, everybody's always doing the best that they can do for the most part, hopefully, and missing an opportunity to set a standard for yourself, whether it's the behavior that you allow, or the treatment from an individual or group, or a work-life balance standard. Evaluating, setting those standards and sticking to it. I think you can miss it. Sometimes I have put work well above whatever other priority there is, and certainly everyone else's priority is well above my own. And I think I'm better for the team when my work-life balance is in check. And I think any team responds far better to the accountability of knowing that their expectations are the same as their peers, the same as their superiors, the same as their direct reports. And when you allow someone to act outside of those behaviors, it can turn into a negative thing. And I've learned that definitely the hard way. And it's a continual evaluation of what you can do better, and how do you improve, and how do you make yourself better for your own sake. And in turn, it's better for the team.
Okay. That's interesting. You talk about work-life balance. We do have a question later in the list that asks you about that. Hold on, let me make sure. Basically, you reference it. How do you manage work-life balance if you do in such a high-pressure job? Those in the audience would like to know.
I would say it's a continual struggle. Very fortunate to have an incredible group of friends and family that like to check me on that a little bit. And sometimes more so than others. But yeah, I mean, I'm incredibly fortunate that I love what I do. And so it's very easy to put all that I have and all that I am into that work. And I gain a lot of satisfaction from being good at it and continually trying. And so it's not without a challenge. Yeah. If somebody that's listening has figured it out and wants to let me know how to always be good at work-life balance, I am more than happy to take the advice. But yeah, I mean, seeking the advice of people that seem to have it all figured out is definitely a conversation I have pretty actively.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think something you said at one point, which I don't know, one thing I've learned is that work-life balance is not always the expectation that you're always going to be in perfect balance is unrealistic, especially if in your hard driving job and you have other complexities in life. But trying to find time when you get a break from what you're up to is good for you and good for your organization, because it clears out the cobwebs a little bit and freshens you up. So yeah, it's good to strive for. Okay, how about if we go to the issue of the year, or at least of 2020 and still in 2021? How has COVID impacted your Baxter marketing and sales strategies, if it has?
Well, we relaunched our rebrand on February 29th, and then the world shut down on March 11th, essentially. We were going into year 2 of being the main sponsor for Road to Reggae Fest up at Sugarloaf. We had just made the commitment to being the official sponsor of the first professional rugby team in Weymouth, Massachusetts, the Free Jacks. And pretty much immediately, we couldn't launch beer in the way that normally you do. So you have events and you have tastings and you go up to tables while people are at dinner. I could say that was taken from us, but it wasn't really taken from us. It was eliminated as an opportunity for everyone. And so we immediately had to be creative about how do we get this beer in front of people in a safe way, in a socially responsible way. And what's incredible is that the rebrand definitely showed what legs it had by outselling everything that we replaced it by. And we could spend a lot of time. We could have spent a lot of time talking about those missed opportunities and woe is me and, oh, this happened to us, but it happened to all of us collectively. And trying to be dynamic and talk very openly and often about staff's mental health and comfort and how do we be better when we don't know what this thing is and we still want to be a brewery. And I think mental health has certainly never been a bigger piece of discussion for me from a business standpoint in any point in my career. And then just talking less about what we couldn't and didn't get to do and more about what's possible, and keeping the eye on the prize and forward thinking has been incredibly important. Shifting very, very quickly to being able to deliver. Luckily, I've been incredibly fortunate to have a great team that was on board and wanted to make it happen. I was making deliveries out of the back of my car.
To people's homes?
That's
what you mean by delivery? Like delivering to people's homes?
Yep. So I would do, my work day and then I'd head out to God knows where. And there was a point where I had delivered to the same street in South Portland for the 3rd day in a row. And what was incredible is obviously this neighborhood had started to talk about it and, oh, I got this. And so then it was like, okay, I can't go to Fessenden Street again for the 4th day in a row. So we need to evaluate how we're doing this. And then we got to making that process more efficient. But it was a challenge, and it was greater investment in our social media interaction and the photography that we were taking and how people were interacting with our brand in the newsletter and from a content and asset standpoint that Tony, our communications manager, he was previously our Boston rep. We were able to make shifts and changes within the organization that should have happened, and they were a real opportunity for us. But I truthfully don't think we would have made had it not been for COVID. So, and all the things that were taken from us or we missed, we also got an incredible opportunity to utilize the staff that wanted to stay working and be creative about how do we make the most of it and how do we come out of COVID and make steps to be forward in our progression, rather than on our heels. So we changed. I mean, if you were interviewing Tony, there's probably not a thing that we've changed or we haven't changed.
They haven't changed.
It is, we fine-tuned some things that we were doing well, but we certainly started doing things a lot better, I think, and how fortunate we were that we had people on staff that had those skill sets and interests and dedication to making it work. So
I have to ask you a question. I'm going to interrupt you for a second because I have a background in brand management, in consumer goods, and some in food. So I'm challenged by the tasting aspect of driving trial of the beer, because that feels like that's one of the biggest barriers if you can't be together with people. How did you do that? I mean, you didn't.
We didn't. I mean, we really didn't. You know, we weren't posted up for anybody that's on here from Maine. You know, we weren't at RSVP or Oak Hill or Ruper's with a tasting. You know, normally we would be able to set up a table and have a small sampling and give that exposure, but we didn't. Which I think speaks volumes to the need for us to have rebranded the way we did and the direction. You know, not everything in hindsight, I'm sure there's some things we could have fine-tuned, but that we really stylistically, ABV, colorway, really made the right moves. And I think the team has felt incredibly proud of that progress and how exciting that the rebranding did a lot of the legwork, you know, not all of it, but a lot of, and we have a lot of really dedicated, incredible partners across the state, both on premise and off premise, that gave us the opportunity to do so, even though they didn't know how it would do. But how fun and how fortunate we are to be able, as the world opens back up towards the end of 2021, we'll be that much better and stronger and more prepared, I think.
Yeah. Okay. Good for you. Okay. Time is tick-tocking on us. Let me scan here for a little bit. Luckily, we've covered some of these questions already. Here's one. How do you think about risk? What goes into your mind when you're contemplating, are you going to take a big risk or should you back off? Either personally or in your work, either way.
I think, you know, I do the best that I can do to evaluate the risk and, you know, what's the impact. I think if my mom was on here, she would probably tell you I don't overthink much. But, you know, sometimes it's a gut reaction and doing the best I can do with the information, but certainly leaning on subject matter experts, you know, whether that's in our own business or in the industry, making the most informed decision that I can make and trying to remind myself to be as forgiving of myself as I would be of others. I tend to be a lot more forgiving of others than I am of my own decisions. But I think I divert back to, you know, Rome wasn't built in a day a lot, and just to really drive home the idea that you don't need to be perfect from decision one, but if we're making progress, that's what more important to me. And the trajectory of every aspect of Baxter is moving forward, and some quicker than others, but it's incredibly powerful and rewarding to see each of those things move forward. And as you get a stronger depth of team, I think you can take more risk, but trying to be as calculated as risk as possible. But that doesn't mean there's not a bridge we don't jump off every once and again. So
makes complete sense. How do you channel your creativity and inner passions that may or may not relate to your work and your job?
Probably goes back to the work-life balance piece. You know, trying not to put only people that want to talk about work around me in a personal life standpoint. But I think, home improvement projects and thinking of things that I can, walls I can knock down and things we can improve in that way. I did pottery and clay at one point. That was a really good outlet. I love to spin. I love to work out with my trainer and the couple of girls that I work out with her. And it's about trying to drive home. I think the busier I am, the more efficient I am. And so it helps me, my brain shut down a little bit when I go to bed completely exhausted too. So, yeah, I think it goes hand in hand with work-life balance. I'm often thinking about work.
Well, that's okay. Sometimes when you're spinning, that's where you get the best. It's kind of like in the shower. Sometimes the aha moment comes when you're sort of focused on something else, or work is noodling. You're like, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? Risk taking. And all of a sudden, boom, there it is.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this is a question from our audience. Do you have any thoughts on how to eliminate the gender pay gap across industry?
I think that's a tough question. I think one of the things is like finding my own voice about my own pay and what's fair and making sure that if I don't find the platform to have those discussions at different points in my career, because I've had that discussion with Pepsi, and there was the way that they tiered the pay structure. When they moved me down to Virginia, they put me $1 within the pay structure of that band. They called it a band. And I had the discussion, and I was, 26 years old. And I was like, that's fine.
Unacceptable.
You're paying me for my age and not for my worth. Like, you've chosen to make me the quality manager for the biggest plant in the country. And I'm not leaving today, and I'm going to soak up all these experiences. But when I do leave, it'll be because of pay. And it was. And then I left, and they came back. And so knowing your value, evaluating and understanding, what is typical of your industry, of your band, of what you're adding to the company. If you're somebody who's not looking to move to the next level and you're not putting a lot in, and you're constantly avoiding work, it's a bad time in your life to go ask for more money. But and then not participating in it just because I could get a female cheaper in any given role. I think I have a responsibility to ensure that that female is paid what they're worth. So if their experience and their commitment facilitates them making as much or more than their male counterparts, they get paid off of that and not off of, well, they're only making X. And so, a 15% increase is good for anybody. So I'll just get them as cheap as I can. I think is the only piece that I can play in that role. And then being active and open when those kind of conversations come up, and when my male counterparts at other breweries ask my advice about female development and female compensation and pay, being very comfortable challenging them to the question of, would you ask me that same question about a male employee, and challenging my peers to think about that, think about those questions. And, if this was your daughter, how would you want her to be compensated? And pushing that uncomfortable conversation now that I've gained the respect and trust of the peers that would lean on me for that question.
Excellent. I think that was very, very helpful advice for a lot of people out there, because compensation is never easy to talk about, no matter who you are, male, female, whatever, young, old. It's a tough conversation, but I think you said it well when you said it's up to you to take care of yourself and make sure you're doing right by yourself and for others as you get into a position where you can influence that. Okay, I've got a couple questions that have come in off the chat that I thought we would bring up now. When you begin to think about tools in your toolbox as a leader, are there any new tools that you're working on either personally or professionally?
Yeah, I think so. I recently was invited to be in a CEO group. And I think I'm the youngest by a little bit, not to call out any ages, but there's 3 females within the group, and that piece is unique as well. And having those conversations about that experience and very much coming to the table of the conversations with that group about here's what I don't know and here's what I do and how would you go about it. Leaning on that experience I don't think it's about cutting corners. It's about being efficient, and what an awesome opportunity I have to have decades worth of experience from all of these males in this group that I get to lean on that aren't even specific to my industry. So I think that that's become a big part of my toolbox. And as you go higher in an organization, your group that you can kind of lean on and trust in, it gets smaller. It just does, because that's the responsibility of a leader. Every time I have an employee issue, I don't discuss it with the group. It doesn't become a collective discussion, or how are we going to deal with this? And so having those people and having that support network, and my friends and family also deserve to not have to talk about Baxter every minute of every day. So having very career-oriented people has been a huge piece of I think my toolbox. And previously, I think probably one of the bigger things was reading. I definitely have kind of challenged myself to do a little more reading this year than the past year. But it's important to me to always be trying to do better and to be ahead of what is an expectation from my staff.
Got it. Good advice. So there's a related question, and we're actually getting very close to 8 o'clock. So we're going to do this pretty quickly. Do you have a personal board of advisors? It relates to what you're talking about. I mean, maybe the CEO group becomes a personal board of advisors. Do you have any other people in your life on a regular basis?
Nothing formally outside of we have the same genetics. I'm very, very fortunate that I have an incredible group of friends and family that I lean on and that I, make sure they keep me in check, and even the folks I work out with, and having that group that kind of knows where I'm at and how things are going and what my patterns are. And our CFO, I tease her and joke that she's my left arm, leg, and left side of my brain. But there's no way I'd be where I am without each one of those people, honestly.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Okay, I think we're close. We have one last question. It's a very important question in the world of Baxter beer. So what is your favorite Baxter beer now that you've helped embrace craft beer, which is your personal favorite?
Normally I would say Innuendo. So it's a beer that is a White Russian stout. It was built off of the very first year I started Baxter. I asked the brewers to make me a beer that tastes like a White Russian, because everyone that I ski with, that's what their drink of choice for the après ski is. They thought I was crazy. They made the beer. The beer was incredible and light bodied and high ABV. And we named it Innuendo and themed it off of the Big Lebowski. And it's fun and it's boisterous and it's memorable in color and taste and profile. And we just barrel aged this year's version in a maple whiskey barrel. And for someone who didn't think that they ever liked something darker or heavier than a Mick Ultra, for a 10% barrel aged maple bourbon Inuit White Russian stout, it is absolutely my favorite, because I think it hits on everything that our team represents from a complexity standpoint, and how many genres they can stylistically do and execute really, really well. And they're fun, and they deserve to be recognized for that, and that personality mixed with just sheer execution. It is amazing beer. So
awesome. I can't wait to try it for sure. All right. So it is now 8:02, so it's time for me to pull this close. Thank you so much, Jen, for joining us tonight. As fellow Mainers, we are very proud of all that you have accomplished, and we wish you luck at Baxter and all your future endeavors. So just thank you, and good luck, and I hope our paths cross and all that kind of stuff.
Thank you very much, and thank you for for having me and letting me represent our team. And Maine women are an incredible platform and audience to have. So I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Awesome. Everybody who's on the call tonight, thank you so much for joining us. We're really happy you were able to join us and listen to all of Jen's words of wisdom and interesting story and accomplishments. We hope to see you again soon at our next WeAreME interview, which will be on Wednesday, April 7th. We will be talking with Colleen Hanlon-Smith, who is the co-owner of Daybreak Growers Alliance. It is a multi-farm share program that operates across Maine. If you're interested in registering today, you can register through the chat box or feel free to go to our website to do so. You can see the screen right here with a picture of Colleen. We're really looking forward to talking with her about actually not that different than what Jen's operation is up to, but into the world of food and farms. Also, we encourage everybody who's interested to follow the Maine Women's Conference on our social media channels to stay up to date with what we're up to. We'd also love to hear what you thought about this event, and if you have any suggestions on other women from whom you would like to hear, please let us know. Again, thank you for joining us. We're excited to be offering this series during this unusual year. We hope you leave tonight feeling inspired, empowered, educated, and connected to your fellow female Mainers. Thanks and have a great night.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.